This isn't getting lost. And it isn't an accident you can bury with one word: hypothermia. In 1959, deep in the Ural Mountains at 30 below zero, 9 people vanish in a single night. On February 26th, searchers find their tent. It isn't toppled. It looks like it was cut open by the people inside. The slashes are clean, fast, continuous, like instinct, like fear. And then there are the footprints. They leave the tent and lead straight toward the forest, barefoot, in socks. At this temperature, you lose feeling in minutes, yet they abandon their only shelter. Later, they find the bodies. Some are nearly naked, some with skin tinted an unnatural orange. And the first question is unavoidable. Why would seasoned hikers cut their way out from the inside and walk barefoot into a night built to kill? Before you label them victims, remember this: they were alive. Young, joking, keeping journals, singing on the train. The kind of faces you see in a photo and just know. They trust each other, and they expect to come home. Their leader is Igor Dyatlov, 23. With him, engineering students, recent graduates, and a war veteran. None of them are amateurs. They're attempting a winter traverse to earn a demanding Grade 3 certification. In their photos, group shots in snow, private jokes, smiles pressed to train windows. Their diaries don't read like dread. They read like ordinary joy. Roots, teasing, food, photos. And that's why what comes next feels like a dull blade, slowly cutting through your ability to understand. Their path leads to a mountain called Kolatsiachl. In the language of the Mansi people, it's often translated as Dead Mountain. It sounds like a curse, but it's closer to a warning. The weather here kills. On February 1st, the blizzard arrives like a wall, erasing direction. You can walk for minutes and suddenly not know if you're going up or down. The world becomes one color, white. They could have descended to the safer tree line, but they pitched their tent on the exposed slope. Maybe to keep altitude for the next day. Maybe they misread the wind. Maybe they were simply exhausted. That decision will be judged again and again. But the real verdict begins that night. Night falls like someone flips a switch. Inside, a faint lantern, breath, coughing, someone writing the last lines of a journal. And then, at some moment, the rules of their world break. No one knows the exact time. We can only reason backward from evidence. First, they choose to leave. Then they're forced. The cuts tell you the exit wasn't fast enough, so they slice a new one from the inside. Picture that act. 30 below, darkness, wind like blades. You'd rather run barefoot than stay 1 second longer. You have to believe something inside the tent felt more urgent than death. They move downhill toward the forest. The footprints suggest no wild sprint, more like controlled movement, conserving strength, as if they're fighting to stay rational, fighting not to let panic detonate. But rationality doesn't last long. At the tree line, they build a fire. It's tiny. Its flame coughs in the wind. Later, searchers find 2 bodies beneath a cedar, almost in underwear. Branches are snapped high above, as if someone climbed to look out or to hide. Then they split. Some try to return to the tent. Some stay by the fire. Others disappear into deeper darkness. And elsewhere, people report strange lights in the sky. Orange spheres drifting like slow fire. We can't prove they matter, but they're there in accounts from that time. What follows is a chain of discoveries that makes investigators flinch. Some collapse on the way back, as if their strength simply turns off. Some are near the fire, brutally frostbitten. Others are dressed strangely, as if clothing was taken from the dead and put on the living. The autopsies push the mystery into darker territory. Some die of hypothermia, reasonable on paper, but 4 others look like victims of a crash. Multiple broken ribs, crushed chests, fractured skulls. Most disturbing of all, little external damage to match the violence inside, as if something massive pressed down, without leaving a story that makes sense. Then comes the detail everyone repeats, and often misreads. One hiker is missing her tongue and soft tissue. Others are missing eyes. Your mind leaps to torture. But there's a colder possibility. In snow and time, nature and animals take what's exposed. The truth isn't cinematic, it's cruel. Harder to explain, radiation. Some clothing shows abnormal traces. Not on everyone, not deadly on its own, but enough to raise eyebrows. Why are these young hikers wearing clothing that reads as irradiated? And there's the report of orange skin, bodies described with an unnatural tint. Some say it's frostbite and light, others suggest chemistry. And some say, quietly, it looks like contact with something unnamed. All we can say carefully, it appears in reports and recollections, but the cause remains unclear. And we reach the final crossroads. 3 families of explanations. Each explains something, then collapses against a single detail. First, an avalanche. More precisely, a slab avalanche. It doesn't have to roar. Sometimes a snow layer shifts and crushes with silent force. You cut your way out, you run, no time to dress. It can explain some trauma, compressed chests, broken ribs, but the problems remain. The signs aren't typical. The tent isn't fully buried, and the footprints look too calm. Second, wind and sound. Some propose infrasound, low-frequency vibrations formed by wind and terrain that can trigger anxiety, even terror. You don't hear it, you unravel. It can explain a panicked exit, but not the radiation, nor the impact-like injuries. Third, military testing. In 1959 Soviet Russia, secrets fall heavier than snow. Some believe weapons were tested nearby. Airbursts, flares, parachute mines. A shockwave can destroy the body from within without leaving obvious wounds. The orange lights in the sky seem to fit, and the radiation makes the route feel even more haunted by secrecy. But so do the counter-arguments. No definitive documents, fractured testimony, a story built from fragments. So we're left with the last category, the unknown. People fill it with anything. Aliens, monsters, forbidden zones, curses. Because unknown is effortless. It needs no evidence, only fear. But the terrifying part is, we don't need monsters. Nature, miscalculation, chaos, and institutional silence are enough to erase 9 lives in one night. The final conclusion is a single line. They died from an irresistible natural force. It's a door, not an explanation, but a shutdown. And once it closes, the details remain trapped in the crack, rotting, gleaming, baiting every mind that follows. Back to the first question. Why cut out from the inside? Why walk barefoot into the snow? If it's only an avalanche, why not go back for gear? If it's the military, why is there no clear enemy, no clear footprint? Every answer feels like gripping a single finger of a larger hand. Maybe that's the cruelest part of the Dyatlov Pass incident. Sometimes the world refuses an ending. You live with fragments. 9 people entered the mountains, and what they left behind wasn't an answer, but a feeling. When the wind shifts in the dark, human reason may go out before the fire does. Dead Mountain is still there. Snow covers footprints. Time sands stories down. But that gash cut from inside the tent, like an eye, never closes.